Alex is the founder of two incredible startups that became success stories, State.com and Jawbone. He's been ranked to the top 40 most influential persons in Silicon Valley, and just so happens to be Lebanese. Please welcome Alex Asseily.
Thank you. A little bit taller. So it's a little bit intimidating after hearing these amazing speeches, and especially the last one from Tom Fletcher, which is very inspiring. And I think actually hits on a lot of the themes that I was going to hit on. So now my talk is slightly redundant. But what I'm going to talk about a little bit is my own journey and some of the emotional aspects of setting up a company, of thinking about solving a need, about dealing with all the challenges. But before I do that, I wanted to just say how impressed I am at how many people have come. It's incredibly moving for me to come back to the place where I'm from, that I grew up in when I was young, and to see such incredible energy, such incredible passion for startups, and the kind of speeches we heard earlier. And I wanted to also thank, in particular, Banque du Liban, the organizers, for doing this, because I think it's an incredible thing. So, just a quick thing about me, for those who are not familiar. I grew up here and then in London, and then I went to California, and I always had this feeling of wanting to solve problems. And in about 1999, I thought that people would start wanting to use headsets and things on their ears and wearable products. So I started a company, and that company became Jawbone. And the story I always tell about Jawbone is that it was an overnight success after 6 years. No one noticed us. We were in nuclear winter for a long time. People asked us to give up. They said, "Don't worry. We knew what we were doing when we gave you the money. Come and do this other thing." But we kept going. We continued to believe, in spite of protestations from a lot of different people. And in 2006, we had our first success, and then we kept going. And we're obviously very proud of what we've done, but the big lesson in it was something I'm going to touch on later, which is perseverance. Then in about 2010, I had this incredible urge to leave California, and I can't really explain why. It was a mixture of wanting to be closer to family, closer to Lebanon, and closer to the things I grew up with. And I decided to set up another company called State. Now, what's interesting about State, and I'm not going to talk a lot about the companies, but I want to tell you one thing about State, and the reason why I set it up. State is an opinion network. So what we're trying to do is connect people around the world through what they think, rather than who they know. We're trying to connect the world through what people think, rather than who they know. We're trying to allow everyone an equal voice in sharing their opinions. So they get counted, so they get to participate. Right now, very, very few people participate in the discourse. We live in a democracy, but we don't live in a democracy of thought. So that's what we're trying to do with State. The reason I bring it up, though, is because the reason I set up State was because of the lessons I learned in Lebanon. That actually, the Lebanese and the people in the region are much more similar to each other than they think they are. And they're kept apart by the systemic political issues that we've inherited. So by connecting people through what they think, we're able to build bridges and coalitions of people who think alike and can collaborate. So let's see if, okay, here we go, acceleration. So the theme of the conference is acceleration. And the question is, how does a place like Lebanon accelerate? How does any entrepreneur take a step forward? And a big part of that is the emotional aspect, which I'll talk about, but it's also tools, right? The first thing is you've got to decide that there's something that's pissing you off in the world. that you want to solve. You need to solve a need. You need to really feel passionate about it. And you need to be unreasonable about how you resolve it. This is a great Bernard Shaw quote, which says that the reasonable man adapts himself to the conditions around him, and the unreasonable man tries to change the conditions around him. Therefore, all progress in the world depends on the unreasonable man or woman. So that was obviously an important lesson, I think, that I learned along the way, that you have to be unreasonable if you want to change things, because by definition, disruption innovation means shifting pre-existing stable behaviors. So what are tools? Tools evolve, right? Before we had cars, we had horses. Made a big difference once we had cars. Before the mobile phone, we had the telegraph. We go all the way back and we had knives. Tools are important. They're the things that extend our capabilities beyond what we have. And this region is responsible for creating some of the most important tools, particularly in communications. And this is something I've spoken about in the past, and I think I emphasize for important reasons here today. The first is that we created perhaps one of the most important tools in communications, which is the phonetic alphabet, and this region then spread that, obviously, through trade through the rest of the world. Whoever did this at the time was probably quite unreasonable. Before that, people were just drawing paintings. The symbolism allowed it to be easy. It became cheap. It became widespread. People could use it. It became a freely accessible technology that changed the course of history in the Mediterranean and beyond. Of course, 1,000 years later, the region, through Islam and the incredible civilization that followed it, was responsible for bringing out other tools, tools of the mind, mathematics, astronomy, chemistry. The reason I talk about these things is because so much of the motivation to start a company comes from confidence. Confidence that you're in the right place, confidence that you grew up in the right family, confidence that you're in a region that's going to support you. This region has what it takes. Believe me. It has what it takes. It always had what it takes. The thing that stands between people and achieving their dreams is confidence, perseverance. And then this is something that, of course, one of the speakers earlier spoke to, which is the incredible network that the Lebanese and the Arabs as a whole and the region as a whole has with the rest of the world. We've been trading for thousands of years. We've been communicating with other cultures. We have cousins that live in other places that we're still in touch with who can help us. Why is this important? Well, it's important for two reasons. Because networks are also tools. They're tools of distribution. But they also open up new markets. If you've got something you want to sell, whatever it is, whether it's a physical good or it's something that's in the knowledge economy, a service of some kind, imagine what a difference it makes to know that there are almost 6 million Lebanese living in Brazil. There are more Lebanese living in Brazil than there are living in Lebanon. And the Lebanese have consistently done well in all the countries they've gone to. This is an unbelievable asset for this country. And it's something that is a tool that's almost unique to this country, certainly in relation to its population. Another reason to be confident, right? But, and I'm at the risk of complaining a little bit, I'm going to say something here that I think is important to say because in a knowledge economy, the knowledge economy of today is not transferred with books and telegraph and fax. It's digital. The digital economy lives on the internet. So I hate to say it, but we are struggling as this region is obviously going through incredible change right now, and I think it's an amazing thing for this country to be holding itself together when all the things and all the turmoil is going on next door, and I think this country should be proud about that. At the same time, for this knowledge economy to really go into the 21st century, the internet has to get faster. So to go and get those tools, and if you can't find the tools, make sure your government gives them to you. Insist on it. And if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Perhaps if there's one thing I wish you would do actually after leaving this conference, or even at this conference, it's to get together and really convince your representatives, convince the government that all boats will lift when the tide rises, when the internet speeds go up. You will be able to communicate with the rest of the world at the speed at which the rest of the world communicates. And I'll give you small examples of how this holds you back. You want to do a Skype call with a collaborator who lives in San Francisco who wants to do a deal with you, but the Skype call breaks every 30 seconds. You can't get the deal done. You want to download a file quickly in order to take a look at it before a conference call. It doesn't download. Can't do the conference call. Things like that hold you back. We're on the age of horses when it comes to the internet. We need to go to the age of cars. Now I'm done with complaining. This country is blessed. You know, I live in California for 17 years. I don't know how I got stuck there for so long. But there's a lot of things you learn when you go to the other side, when you go to the place that everyone looks up to for entrepreneurship, for technology. And of course you recognize the things that are great. It's sunny, people play frisbee, the ocean, you can go surfing. But you can do that in Lebanon too, right? You can. You can go surfing, it's sunny, you can play frisbee. The question is, you know, what is really the difference? Well, it turns out there isn't that much of a difference. Starting a company is hard everywhere. There is a belief that you can do it in California because it's already happened. It's like watching someone, you know, go into a cave and come out with a pot of gold. If you never see someone coming out of the cave, you're never going to go into it. But if you see someone coming out of the cave with a pot of gold, you're more confident that you go in and you can get it. It's the same thing here. You have to believe. This country is endowed with incredible education. In some ways, better education than parts of the developed world, parts of America. Multilingual population, a population that's connected, like I mentioned earlier. A talent for languages, a network of people. Perfect for a knowledge economy. Perfect. So I'm just going to talk to a couple of things. So the first is why I moved back to London. And so moving back to London to start State, again, I'm going to give you a little, it's more of an example of what I mean when I say it's easy to do. It's hard to do things everywhere, and it's not as hard as you think to do it in the places you're living in, right? I leave California, I've been there for 16 years, I started Jawbone there, I moved back to London to start another company. Everyone says, you're crazy, why are you doing that? It turns out it's not that hard to do in London, and it has a huge number of advantages. There's just as much talent. The talent is more focused. It's more loyal. It's less expensive. Those are better tools. And I'm having an amazing time doing it in London. And I think you should feel equally confident in Lebanon. I think it's really important for Lebanon to understand its genuine resources, and really understand that this is an incredible place to be doing things. But you've also got to think big. There's a reason why Swedish companies have done very well recently. Do you know why? Because the Swedish market itself is not very big. So Swedes never think about just supplying the Swedish market. They immediately think globally. Well, Lebanon is a lot like Sweden in that way. You've got great education, perfect for a knowledge economy, you've got a network around the world, but you want to think globally. And to the point that was brought up earlier, the Michelangelo quote, or the Da Vinci quote, I can't remember which one. You always want to aim high. Aim for number one. Aim to compete at a global level. One of the bizarre and perhaps double-edged aspects of the internet is that news travels fast. In other words, perceptions of quality and lack of quality travel fast. You've got to operate at a global level from the beginning. You have access to it, and you can achieve it. And then lastly, to perhaps the most important lesson, I brought up earlier about being unreasonable, about wanting to change the world around you, wanting to solve a need. You've got to feel it emotionally. You've got to think about getting up every morning and saying, yes, I want to go and do this. I want to go and deal with all these issues every day in order to solve this problem. It motivates me. Because the life of an entrepreneur is difficult. It's challenging. It's lonely. It's not stable by definition. And so perhaps the second most important quality after being unreasonable, perhaps, is perseverance. Do not give up. The number of companies, including my own, the number of founders I've met that I know who were on the verge of giving up, and like a month later or 6 months later, they had a huge success, is incredible. And perhaps the most famous Levantine entrepreneur of all, Steve Jobs, was adamant about this. His life is a perfect example of it. So I just want to say again, it's an honor to be here in front of you all. Thank you for listening, and best of luck in all your enterprises. Support each other, encourage each other. Ask for help from Lebanese here, from Lebanese abroad, from non-Lebanese here, from non-Lebanese abroad. But go get it.